Let's rewind about a year and a half ago when Brian Kelly got hired to be the head football coach at LSU. Both fans and non LSU fans alike asked the question, well, how in the world is a guy from Boston who spent his entire career as a coach in the Midwest going to recruit in the state of Louisiana? How in the world is that going to happen? And everybody was so worried about it. Let me ask you this question now. How do you feel now?
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, thanks for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Plus, you can also find us on YouTube as well. Just search Locked On LSU in the search bar. Like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff. Just happy that you're here with us. My name is Caroline Fenton, and you can find me on Twitter at CarolineFenton1, or you can follow me along with the podcast at Locked On LSU. Also, a very happy draft day to everyone. Round one of the NFL draft going down in Kansas City tonight. I'm going to have an LSU players in the draft breakdown at the end of the show, so make sure to stick around for that. But I want to start here because a massive chunk of news just dropped as 5-star tight end Trey'Dez Green from East Feliciana has officially committed to LSU. He went to his high school, had the full commitment, had the full ceremony on Wednesday. A hometown kid, basically, just a hop and a skip away from LSU's campus. And this is huge for the 2024 class for so many reasons. I'll start with the obvious thing. Maybe this isn't the obvious thing. I'll just start with one thing. Let's just do that. Getting top in-state talent. That's exactly what you're getting in Trey'Dez Green, a kid from East Feliciana, committing to LSU. That's been one of Brian Kelly's biggest priorities from day one that he stepped foot in Baton Rouge all the way through now, and will continue to be the driving force with how he wants to build this program moving forward, is doing it with the talent in Louisiana. Louisiana, specifically South Louisiana. Just look at Baton Rouge and New Orleans and the surrounding areas. That is one of the most talent-rich, if not the most talent-rich areas in the country. And you can look at Florida and Georgia and Texas and Southern California, and you can make arguments for all of those. I'm not saying that's wrong, but South Louisiana is something special now. And if you let those players go elsewhere, you're already behind the 8 ball. I've said it before, and I'll say it so many times again. LSU is in a very unique and privileged position, being the one big-time program in the state of Louisiana. That's not a knock on ULL. That is not a knock on Southeastern. That is not a knock on Tulane. It's not a knock on Louisiana Tech. It's just simply reality. Alabama competes with Auburn for in-state recruits. South Carolina competes with Clemson for in-state recruits. Florida competes with Florida State in Miami for in-state recruits. Don't even get me started on the state of Texas or the states of California. If you grow up in Louisiana, you want to go to LSU. So for Brian Kelly to be able to keep a lot of this top talent home, especially when that was one of the early concerns about Brian Kelly, was how in the world is he going to be able to recruit kids from South Louisiana? A guy from the Northeast, a guy who spent the entirety of his career at Michigan or at Notre Dame, recruiting very different types of people from different types of families from different areas of the country. How in the world is that going to be able to work? Well, we saw it with the 2022 class. We saw it with the 2023 class incoming this spring and summer. And we're starting to see that come to fruition in the 2024 class. And Trey'Dez Green is one of a larger group of in-state kids that want to come play for Brian Kelly and for LSU. Just look at the top 5 prospects in the state of Louisiana right now. Dominic McKinley is the top-rated prospect, the 5-star defensive lineman. He hasn't committed anywhere. He has offers from Alabama, across the SEC. LSU is one of them. That is one player that LSU is recruiting very heavily. Number 2, Trey'Dez Green. Like I just said, 4-star, 5-star tight end, depending on whatever website that you use. For example, I'm using 24/7 Sports. You can use On3, whatever you like to use. Totally your preference. Trey'Dez Green, the number 2 recruit in the state, committed to LSU. Tylen Singleton, 4-star linebacker from Louisiana, hasn't officially committed yet to LSU, but all of the crystal balls have him very, very high on LSU. I can expect that to be an LSU commitment here soon enough. Now, things change. I know, until pen goes to paper, anything can change. But that is one that looks hopeful that Tylen Singleton will be heading to Baton Rouge in 2024. Deshaun McBride, 4-star safety, committed to LSU. Kalaj Cobbins, 4-star linebacker, committed to LSU. And then add in the 6th best player in the state, Wardell Mack, the 4-star corner. He, same as Tylen Singleton, has not officially committed to LSU, but all of the crystal balls have him heading to Baton Rouge in the 2024 season. So where it stands right now, that is 5 of the top 6, depending on Dominic McKinley and what he decides to do, kids in the state of Louisiana that have already pledged their commitment or are going to pledge their commitment, more than likely, to LSU. That is huge. Getting the number 2 player in the state, the number 3 player in his position in the country, and the number 56 player at any position in the country in Trey'Dez Green, and he's heading to LSU over A&M, or over Florida State, over Alabama. Offers across the country, offers at some of the top programs in the country, including LSU, and he is heading to LSU in the 2024 season. So that's the Louisiana recruiting part of it. That was Brian Kelly's priority, and he's delivering on that. The second part of it is his position group. Because if there's one thing that we knew about Brian Kelly, or at least one thing that I knew about Brian Kelly when he was named the head coach at LSU, was that man loves him some tight ends. Loves him some tight ends. Kyle Rudolph, he coached in college. Michael Mayer is one of the top tight end prospects in this year's draft. I know that Brian Kelly did not coach him this past year. Brian Kelly recruited him. Brian Kelly developed him at Notre Dame. And there are a million others that I'm missing that all of a sudden just, I can't think of. But Notre Dame is tight end U, and Brian Kelly has a whole lot to do with that. He loves the tight end position. I mean, we saw that from Mason Taylor. Mason Taylor was a 3-star recruit coming into LSU, was a true freshman this past season. I viewed him as a guy that was exciting to watch the development, just given how much Brian Kelly loves the tight end and how well Brian Kelly has developed tight ends throughout the entirety of his career. But then Mason Taylor turned out to being a fixture of this LSU offense later on in the season. So that's huge. So you've got a true sophomore, Mason Taylor, coming back in 2023. And the rest of that tight end room in this season, you've got 4-star Mac Markway from St. Louis. You've got a 4-star Kamorian Pimpton, a recruit that LSU stole from Vanderbilt, and a 3-star Jackson McGowan that they took from Cincinnati. So you've got Mason Taylor, who was, lights out, was a really solid piece of this offense in his true freshman season, coming back for year 2. You've got 3 young guys, 3 true freshmen that I'm sure are going to be groomed and developed very similarly to the way Mason Taylor was. And then you go to the 2024 year, you've got Trey'Dez Green, 4-star, 5-star, again, depending on the recruiting site that you use. And then you've also got 4-star Tavion Galloway coming in from Ohio. So in 2024, this is what your tight end room looks like. Junior Mason Taylor, sophomore 4-star Mac Markway, sophomore 3-star Jackson McGowan, sophomore 4-star Kamorian Pimpton, freshman 5-star Trey'Dez Green, and freshman 4-star Tavion Galloway. Holy moly, that is 6 tight ends that are ranked at the top of their position groups in the country. One of those being a homegrown Louisiana kid. I'm excited to see what this tight end room looks like this year and moving forward, because we've seen Brian Kelly develop tight ends so well. I'm excited to see how tight ends are starting to kind of sprinkle more prominence and relevance throughout LSU's offense, because it's not something that we've seen a whole lot of. I'm excited to see what this team can be, knowing the track record of Brian Kelly and Mike Denbrock with tight ends, looking at the success that they've had recruiting and developing tight ends, and now LSU moving forward, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the line, LSU tight ends being basically a staple in the first round of the NFL draft, which, happy holidays. So I'm looking forward to it, but keeping good players home. That's Brian Kelly's priority. That's what he did in landing 5-star tight end Trey'Dez Green from East Feliciana. Coming up next, football is not the only team on campus that landed a pretty solid commitment today. We will get into that coming up next. If you're looking for a delicious snack, but you don't want to sacrifice the calories, the sugar, the fat, then you need to try the best tasting protein bar ever. Seriously, built. You've got to try it. If you're like me and you don't want to, and you do want to make healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste, then Built Bar is the perfect thing for you. They are healthy and they taste amazing. They taste so amazing that they don't taste healthy. Like, you don't know what I'm talking about. Whenever things taste healthy, it's probably not very good. But these are covered in 100% real dark chocolate, so they taste so good, and they come in flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream. They taste like a candy bar, but they're healthy. They've got 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 13 grams of protein. So what I like to do, sometimes I get that 2, 3 o'clock slump throughout the day. So I'll just carry around a Built Bar with me, and then I snack on that, and I am full for hours. And now you don't have to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com, which of course you can still do that. Or you can go to your local Walmart, walk to the pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built Bars. Then you can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or the coconut puffs. You can also go to Sam's Club. So if you're close to that, run in, grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter puff and churro puff. You can also, of course, find the specialty flavors still at Built.com. You can thank me later. Well, thanks again for making Locked on LSU your first listen every single day. Every dayers. Tomorrow on the show, we'll have a baseball breakdown plus a recap of night 1 and night 2 of the NFL draft. Where do the LSU Tigers end up at the end of the draft? We'll get into that on Friday's edition of Locked on LSU. But let's go back a few weeks. Obviously LSU Women's Basketball wins the national championship. Alexis Morris gets taken in the first round of the NFL draft, and we are all on cloud 9 for Kim Mulkey, for the entire team, for the entire coaching staff, for LSU, for the state of Louisiana, bringing home its 50th national title across all sports in school history. That's not something I take lightly. It's not something that you should take lightly either. The fact that LSU is not just a football team that brings home championships, that this is a school, this is an athletic department that brings home championships, but quickly pivoted to the 2023-2024 season. You have to these days. I mean, you're all ABR, always be recruiting. That's when the Hailey Van Lith rumors started. So it was Kim Mulkey a couple weeks ago before anything went down. Kim Mulkey asked about Louisville, and I'll explain.
In the back here, yes. Speak loud.
Is Louisville going to be unhappy next year?
Is Louisville going to be unhappy next year? Well, we don't play them, if that's what you mean, in case we're beating them. And I'll leave it at that, all right? And those of you who don't know what he's talking about, that's your problem.
And if you don't know, now you know. Kim Mulkey was being asked about Louisville because Hailey Van Lith, one of the top recruits coming out of high school, one of the top players in the country, had just entered the transfer portal. And she took a visit to LSU. It's something that I broke down on the podcast when it happened, Hailey Van Lith's visit to LSU. And as of today, on Thursday, it is official. Hailey Van Lith is an LSU Tiger. I mean, I'm telling you, just commitments left and right, transfer portal, recruits coming out of high school. I can't even keep up with it these days. But this is what LSU is getting from Hailey Van Lith. One, they're finding a replacement for Alexis Morris. Alexis Morris, of course, went to the WNBA. That was depth, that was production that needed to be replaced for this team coming up next year. Number two thing that they're getting? A hell of a player. My goodness. Hailey Van Lith coming out of high school was a top 10 recruit in that same year with Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. I mean, talk about a recruiting class of just absolute, gold coming out of that year. But she was a top 10 recruit along with those two, and was also the top transfer portal target in this year's transfer portal for women's college basketball. In 2022 at Louisville, she averaged just shy of 20 points per game. That was really a majority of her production, 4.5 rebounds a game, 3.2 assists. But that's the biggest thing, was offensive production for Hailey Van Lith. So that's another thing that LSU women's basketball is getting. Offensive production, a player that can fill in some of those holes that have been left by players entering the WNBA draft. And the third thing is they're just getting a gamer. Hailey Van Lith she's got a spicy personality now. And that's why I think that LSU is such a perfect fit for her. That combination of Angel Reese and Hailey Van Lith, oh my goodness. I do not want to be on the receiving end of smack talk from those two. It's fiery and spicy personalities, and it is truly those two between Angel Reese and Hailey Van Lith. And I know that the rest of this team also personifies Kim Mulkey's personality, but it's really those two. And I think it's been a trickle-down effect from Kim Mulkey down to the players, down to the team, and how they play. They play with fire. They play with passion. They play with emotion, and they do not let down. They're a tough squad, and it's not everyone's cup of tea. I don't think anybody is going to look at this LSU team before and especially after Hailey Van Lith and say, wow, what a sweet group of girls. Really. But I view this as a team that just flat out wants to win, of tough, physical, fiery basketball players. And adding that was even before Hailey Van Lith, but adding Hailey Van Lith, it's only adding gasoline into that fire. This is a huge addition for LSU women's basketball. And if there ever could be the perfect piece to fill into your team to kind of help out a back-to-back championship, to be the catalyst for winning 2 championships in a row, Hailey Van Lith is the piece. She absolutely is the piece. Massive pickup for Kim Mulkey. Massive, massive addition for this team. And I'll tell you what, this is not the end for Kim Mulkey. Maybe not this year, but this is not the end of Kim Mulkey being an attractive landing spot, and LSU being an attractive landing spot for some of the top players in the country. Watch out, because here comes the next great dynasty of women's college basketball. Pretty strong words, I know. Coming up next, it is draft day. We will get into what the NFL draft gurus project from the NFLSU hopefuls tonight and throughout the rest of the weekend of the NFL draft. We will get into that coming up next. Well, thanks again for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. LSU baseball on the road, taking on Alabama in a 3-game series this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're done with Thursdays, I think. Thank goodness I'm done with Thursday games. I'll have a full breakdown of that on tomorrow's podcast. So make sure to check out for that for a little bit of an Alabama preview. But it is NFL draft day. And I would be lying if I told you that I wasn't a little bit bummed about there not being more of an exciting LSU prospect in this year's NFL draft. And that's no disrespect to PJ Ojolari and Keyshawn Booty and to Jarpernard Converse and to Anthony Bradford and all of the other players from LSU that are draft eligible. That is no disrespect whatsoever, because I know for 100% certain whatever teams pick up these guys, they're getting good ones. But I feel like we've been so spoiled over the last few years, especially the 2020 draft. And then the 2021 draft with Jamar Chase. And then the 2022 draft with Derek Stingley Jr. That there was at least one, if not multiple, marquee players coming out of LSU that were expected to go number 1 overall, top 5 overall, top 10, at least in the first round. And that was always so fun. It was so fun to talk about that. It was so fun to watch those players take on the stage, wherever the draft may be that year, and for me to be able to say, I covered that guy. That guy went to LSU. I love him. It doesn't make it any less exciting for these individual players. But that's just kind of how I'm feeling going into the NFL draft. But it is going to be a fun one regardless. But where do the NFL draft gurus expect these LSU players to land? So for my radio show, I host a radio show in Nashville. I developed this system of grading mock drafts. And I chose 5 of the mock drafters that I thought were the best at what they do, the NFL draft evaluators. And it was Dayton Brugler of The Athletic, Daniel Jeremiah of NFL.com. It was Todd McShay of ESPN, Mel Kiper Jr. of ESPN, and Peter King of NBC. I think those 5 are the best at what they do. I took all of their final mock drafts from 2019 on and came up with a point system, a grading system to evaluate how precise and how accurate their mock drafts were. And honestly, it was a super fun exercise to go back and see, like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's right. People did think Malik Willis was going to be the round 1 pick. Like, oh my gosh, I forgot about this guy. He was a huge hyped up prospect that year, and now we haven't really seen a lot from him. So it was really fun. It was a fun exercise to go back and do. But what I have found is that both Peter King and Dayton Brugler have the best mock drafts, at least from 2019 on. But I went with Dayton Brugler. I love both of those guys. They each have wonderful information, but I went with Dayton Brugler because I feel like his mock drafts and his draft evaluation is super, super detailed. He's got a lot of information there. So I went to Dayton Brugler's 7-round mock draft, which, bless this poor man. I mean, he does his beast every year, which is like the top 20 prospects in every single position with pros and cons and evals on all of them. And then, turn around and do a 7-round mock draft. Not for the faint of heart. However, I looked at Dayton Brugler's 7-round mock draft to see where he projects all of these LSU players to go. Again, these are mock drafts. Again, anything can happen on draft night. Even the best of the best, like the Peter Kings and the Dayton Bruglers, get more wrong than they get right. But it's just a nice gauge to see kind of what the NFL circles are saying about individual prospects. To no surprise, Dayton Brugler has B.J. Ojulari as the first LSU Tiger off the board. Dayton Brugler has B.J. Ojulari going 39th to Carolina in the 2nd round. Consensus on B.J. Ojulari is that he was going to be an early to mid 2nd round pick. Now, I think that B.J. Ojulari has late 1st round pick talent and potential. But as we all know, that's not always how things shake out in the NFL draft. So B.J. Ojulari, consensus across a bunch of mock drafts that I saw, have him going early to mid 2nd round. B.J. Ojulari to Carolina, according to Dayton Brugler. And then he only has 4 other LSU players getting drafted throughout the entirety of the draft. Anthony Bradford as the 2nd LSU Tiger off the board, going 90th to the Cowboys. I believe that's in the 3rd round. 3rd LSU Tiger off the board, Kayshon Boutte at 150 to Washington. Jaquelin Roy as the 4th one off the board, going 203rd to the Texans. And Jay Ward 5th, 209th to the New York Giants. Now, again, that is just a mock draft. That's just an estimation. So he has B.J. Ojulari going in the 2nd round, has Anthony Bradford going in the 3rd. And beyond that, it's just, late 3rds, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounders. I would be surprised, honestly, if Jark Bernard-Converse doesn't go at least in the 6th or 7th round, just because of what he was able to do at LSU's Pro Day. I know since his Pro Day and his interviews, the meetings that he had with several NFL teams, his draft stock skyrocketed. So that was one name that I was a little bit surprised to not see, at least going late in the NFL draft in the 6th or 7th round. And I know that you might hear that. Maybe you don't, but maybe you do. You hear that and say, well, that stinks. Going late in the NFL draft. Don't sleep on the late rounders. I mean, I'm not counting out the fact that Jay Ward could be a lights out safety for the New York Giants if they take him in whatever round this is. I believe it's maybe the 5th or 6th at 209. I don't know. It's a solid draft for LSU players. We take for granted the Joe Burrows going number 1 overall and the Derek Stingley's going number 3 overall. Whoever gets B.J. Ojulari, I know for certain, is getting a good one. Whoever picks up these guys, they're getting good ones. It may not be as purple and gold laden of an NFL draft night one night as we're very used to, but that's an even more LSU players going into the NFL, playing at the highest level in sports, playing on Sundays. And that is another recruiting tool that Brian Kelly, that Mike Denbrock, that Matt House, that Brian Polian can continue to use. Is look at all these guys. Doesn't matter if it's the first round, doesn't matter if it's the 7th round. Look at all these guys playing on Sundays. That came through Baton Rouge. That's going to do it for me today. Thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. Every dayers tomorrow on the show. Baseball breakdown plus a recap of the NFL draft. All of that coming up on tomorrow's episode of Locked On LSU.